Hello and welcome. When women pick up guns, it's a sure sign that a conflict has reached its lowest point. In the case of Liberia, one of the most disturbing aspects of the 14-year civil war was the fact that mothers and daughters were active combatants. Many of them had no choice.
1990, when the war started, we were in Burma. They took my father, they asked my father whether he was Muslim or they see. And now that was Muslim man. So for that reason, Alhaji, they killed him. And they killed some of my brothers and sisters. No father, no mother. I don't have anybody to stay with. That's how I just jumped in the revolution and started fighting. I don't need to praise myself. I was not fighting because I'm happy. I was not happy of doing it.
Well, upwards of 30,000 women and girls found themselves in this situation. So now that the war has been over nearly 5 years, what has happened to Liberia's female fighters? Promises of international assistance to help the former women soldiers re-enter society have not kept up with the need. So they're fighting back in a new way by helping one another become productive members of society. On today's show, we ask what can be done to help Liberia's mothers and daughters rebuild their lives and become productive citizens. Well, joining us here to discuss the situation in Liberia is Jackie Red, who was just 13 when she was abducted and raped by government soldiers. She later joined the National Patriotic Front of Liberia and even served as bodyguard to the former President Charles Taylor. Jackie now works for Search for Common Ground and has an 18-year-old son. Florence Bala was separated from her family and captured at the age of 14 during the country's first civil war. She was raped by members of the United Liberation Movement of Liberia for Democracy. With no other choices left to her, she stayed with them, serving as a cook and porter. Well, since hostilities ended, Florence has been working with various peace initiatives. She's married with 2 children. Also with us is Tanya Banath, a researcher with Amnesty International. She has studied the lives of women and children during the conflicts in Liberia and Sierra Leone. I want to welcome you all to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've mentioned both Jackie and Florence. I've mentioned for both of you the situation, what you went through individually for our viewers. But take me back to that time, and Jackie, starting with you, take me back to that time when your lives changed so dramatically, when you were actually then forced to pick up a gun.
I was 1990 when the war started. It was like the first time for Liberians to experience this great brutal war in our country. When people decided to flee the country, and I took my way to find a place to go. But on my way, it was shooting, people was dying, mother and children were killed. And later I came to find out my father was killed. And I was adopted by a man that said he wanted me, but there were 4 men that, like, everyone have to go out with me. And every day as they go on, so I decided to pick up the same thing that I can do. I decided to protect myself. That was the way that I pick up
So it was protection as well as, I mean, it was survival basically.
Yes. It was the only way that you could survive at that time because there is nowhere to go. The country was sealed and nowhere to go. You just have to pick up the arm to protect yourself. Either every day you'll be abused.
Florence, the same thing for you. You were barely a teenager when it all happened. What do you recall of that time?
It was very bad. On my way from Guinea to Teklemu border, we went there to find food. Unfortunately for us, we bordered with these guys and we were captured by them, and in that very moment, they killed my parents. My father died there because he didn't want for them to go out with me as small as I was. And then my mother was fired and later died in the bush. That's how I lost my sister in the same manner. And from that point, I was not really a trained soldier to say maybe I went on a base to be trained. But after this incident, they raped me right in our place, and then this guy took me along on their base. And I was in a horse for about 3 days. And he was just going on and on having me eating, no drinking, nothing. I was just in that place just like that for about 3 days. And after the 3 days, I decided to make noise so people could come because I heard people talking at the background. And when I make the noise, fortunately for me, I saw women on the ground. And that's how we started the journey Whenever they are going on the front line, they take us along with them. We begin to cook for them. Sometimes we took ammo and follow them on the wayside. But when you get into an ambush, you will be forced to fire. You will be forced to protect yourself to pass in a place. You must pass through that.
You're basically on the front line. Yeah. Florence, I want to put an email to you, and Jackie, you can contribute to this afterwards if you may, but this came in from Carol in Michigan here in the USA, and Carol wrote in saying, have you ever found those that raped you and killed your families? And if not, what would you do if you faced them?
Okay, as for me, I still see this guy right now in Vonchama, in my home county. He is there. He's working with the Action Femme. It's an NGO that is operating in Lofa. He works with them, and I see him day and night. But when I see this guy, you know, I have just decided to just forget it and just move on with my life. Because even if I happen to sue this guy, there is nothing that I can get out of it, because it's never going to bring my parents back to life. I will forever be lonely. So I don't think it's really necessary for me to have anything to do with him. But when I see him, I know exactly that this is the guy that make my life to be like this. But I already sued him to go, and God is going to take care of that situation.
Now, Jackie, in the same way, do you feel that there is a lack of accountability? Do you have to face the same demons that Florence is facing?
Sure. We just need to forgive each other. That is most of our concern. And we need for Liberian people to understand that. They should understand us, that what we went through, it was so terrible. It was so terrible. If you try to put your mind on to imagine what you went through, you will never feel, you will never want to go ahead. And if you reflect your mind back what happened to you in the past, you will never face in the future. The future is a challenge. We need to face it. I will never remember this guy, because that time you just fighting for survival. So if you happen to find anybody at this time, you will never want to put your mind on him. Killing him will not solve the problems. I think I have forget about him. This is why I am on this process for other friends to do the same, that they should forget their past and face in real life.
Let me bring in Tanya Banath, who's joining us here as well. She's from Amnesty International. Tanya, let me ask you why in particular. I mean, it seems the war in Liberia, the conflict that took place, was particularly violent, particularly brutal. What made it so different in this way?
Well, I've been following the Liberian conflict for a number of years, and there's a real lack of education among the Liberian community, and I think that contributes significantly to why it was so violent, and people were so easily manipulated to take up guns, and there was a large number of child soldiers, as you're seeing here, and they're easily manipulated, and they're given drugs, and then they are made to do very violent things. You know, so in the future, one of the main things is to ensure that Liberians go back to school and get quality education. But I think that's a key factor to the level of brutality. There was significant rape, and you know, women were really victims of sexual violence. That was a huge feature in this war.
Now, of course, Tanya, we're showing clips from the Amnesty International video that highlights this campaign. To what extent has the international community let Liberia down in trying to rebuild and helping its former combatants to reintegrate?
Well, we've done a fair amount of research on there's something called the Disarmament, Demobilization, Rehabilitation, and Reintegration Program that helps countries get over the war and assists ex-combatants. And they've given a significant amount of, made a significant effort to do that. But one of the issues that we were looking at, and why we focused on women, is that often these post-conflict programs don't address women's issues as well as they do men's issues.
Yes, and Tanya, I think there was also the issue with Liberia that the DDRR program only lasted about a year from the end of 2003 to the end of 2004, the official United Nations one.
Well, it's actually still going on in terms of the reintegration assistance they took the guns away, and that took about a year or so. But then the reintegration assistance is actually now in its last phase, which started earlier this year. And I think they're targeting now about 7,500 people, probably about 40% which are women. So they've kind of learned from their past and are incorporating many more women in to the last phase. So yeah, ending this, at the end of this year. But some of the issues were that, there weren't things that helped to target women who were victims of sexual abuse and rape. And it's very difficult for women sometimes who have been victims to actually take part in programs because of the shame and stigma around that.
Well, listen, we're going to, as we go to break, we're going to have more of the discussion in a moment. As we go to break, let's look at another clip from the Amnesty International video, which looks at the way some of the women were forced into combat.
The first war, women were abused so much sexually. The women feared that the second war, they were not going to sit back for somebody to come and abuse their right this time. So most of them fear they see where the men can hold their arm and do, and commit anything against them. They themselves are going to hold their arms. That's why you saw most women participating to really protect themselves and their children.